Imagine waking up, but not, the way you usually wake up, with an alarm clock of the sun hitting your face. Imagine waking up in a haze that is so thick, so gray and throbbing, that you don't even know your own name. You don't know where you are.
You don't know who you are.
Not at first, no. The only thing that exists in your entire universe is pain. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a headache or a stiff back. We're talking about pain so absolute, so architectural, that it feels less like a sensation and more like a physical landscape that you were just completely lost in.
It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? The idea of consciousness returning, but returning into a nightmare that's already in progress.
Exactly. And then, through this gray fog, a face. A face looms over you. And it's not a doctor. It isn't a nurse in some sterile hospital room with all the beeping machines.
No.
It's a woman you've never seen before. And her face is close, way too close. She's forcing her air into your lungs. And when the fog finally lifts just enough for you to speak, for you to even process sensory input, she tells you two things. First, she tells you that you've been in a catastrophic car accident. And second, with a smile that is somehow both comforting and utterly terrifying, she says, "I'm your #1 fan."
And that's the line. That is the quintessential nightmare of the public figure, isn't it? But it's also, I think, a universal fear. The fear of total helplessness in the hands of a complete stranger. We are, of course, doing a deep dive today into the source material of Stephen King's psychological masterpiece, Misery.
And this is going to be a heavy one. We are stripping away the pop culture image, the memes, even the movie, which is brilliant, don't get me wrong.
A fantastic movie.
But we are going straight to the text. We're analyzing part 1, which is titled Annie, and then the opening of part 2, Misery.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. We aren't just retelling a spooky story for the sake of it. We are unpacking the power dynamics of captivity. We're looking at the physiology of addiction, the metaphor of the creative spark when it's basically held at gunpoint, and this really fascinating concept of fairness in fiction. Because what King is doing here is he's interrogating the whole relationship between the creator and the consumer in a way that is just incredibly uncomfortable.
It's almost like a hostage negotiation manual disguised as a novel.
So,
But let's get right into the setup, because the context of how Paul Sheldon ends up in this bed is, well, it's just dripping with irony.
oh, it is.
He wasn't just on a Sunday drive.
No, and this is so crucial for understanding his psychological state later on. Paul Sheldon is a superstar author. I mean, huge. He's famous for the Misery Chastain series, these sweeping, heaving bosom Victorian romances.
Right.
But the catch is, Paul hates Misery. He despises her. In his mind, she's a shackle. She represents everything he hates about his own success, his own fame.
Big golden handcuffs.
Exactly. So the backstory we get from the text is that he had just finished a new manuscript, a book called Fast Cars.
This is his gritty crime novel, right?
Yeah.
His big departure.
This is his bid for literary immortality. He's thinking, finally, I'm a serious writer. No more corsets. No more melodramatic deaths on the moors.
Oh.
He finishes the book at the Hotel Boldorado, which is a real place, very atmospheric.
And he celebrates.
He pops a bottle of Dom Perignon.
Which is such a nice image. The writer, the champagne, the triumph of finishing the work.
But then he makes this incredibly reckless decision. Instead of flying back to New York like a normal person, he decides to drive his 1974 Camaro all the way to the West Coast.
In a snowstorm.
In a blizzard. And he's drunk. He has 2 bottles of Dom in him by the time he hits the road, and he drives straight into this storm near a place called Sidewinder, Colorado.
So he's running away from his past success, literally and metaphorically, and he crashes.
He tries to outrun the storm and fails. The Camaro goes off the road, it flips. And this is where the real horror begins.
Yeah.
Paul isn't just hurt. King uses the word pulverized. His legs are pulverized.
God.
And the person who pulls him from the wreck isn't an EMT, it's Annie Wilkes.
That initial rescue scene, the way it's described in the book, it's so visceral. It's not heroic at all. Paul describes her giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but he doesn't call it saving his life.
Yeah. What does he call it?
He calls it a rape of his breath.
That word choice is so deliberate and incredibly disturbing. It establishes that violation of his autonomy right from page 1. He feels her forcing air into him, invading his body before he can even consent to being alive again.
And the sensory details King uses. Oh my God. Paul smells her. It's not antiseptic. It's not cologne.
No, it's this nauseating mixture of vanilla cookies, chocolate ice cream, and chicken gravy.
That combination, it's so cloying. It makes my stomach turn just thinking about it.
It's comfort food that's been weaponized. It paints Annie as someone who is consumable, soft, domestic, But in this context, it's just repulsive. It suggests this gluttony or a really childish sort of consumption.
So when Paul finally wakes up properly, the reality starts to set in.
Yes. He's in a guest room in an isolated farmhouse. His legs are shattered. And Annie hasn't called an ambulance. She's splinted his legs herself. Yeah. Using parts of aluminum crutches and duct tape.
Which immediately tells us, and it tells Paul, that she has some kind of medical training, but something is deeply, deeply off. You don't use duct tape and crutch parts if you're sane and have a working telephone.
Right, and she's running an IV. She has potent drugs. But the setting is just wrong. And Annie herself, Paul's description of her is fascinating. He focuses on her solidity.
Her solidity, what do you mean by that?
He says she has no hiatus, no breaks, there are no gaps in her. He compares her to an idol in an H. Rider Haggard novel, like a stone goddess you'd find in some lost city.
An idol is something you worship, but it's also something that demands sacrifice. It's unyielding. It doesn't negotiate with you.
Precisely. She is a block of physical and emotional concrete. She introduces herself as the #1 fan, and she's read everything. But she is obsessed, absolutely obsessed with the Misery series. And then Paul notices the unplugged moments.
Okay, these are the moments that genuinely scared me more than any of the violence later on. Can you explain what he sees?
It's the absence of presence that's so scary. Paul realizes that sometimes, in the middle of a sentence, Annie just goes blank.
She just checks out.
Completely. I describes it like a machine that has been switched off. Her face goes slack. Her eyes are empty. She's catatonic. It's like looking into a deep crevasse. You expect to see a bottom, but there's just darkness.
Wow.
It's the first really clear indicator that this isn't just an overzealous fan with some boundary issues. This is severe, untreated psychosis. She dips out of reality entirely.
So Paul is trapped, he's broken, and he's realizing his nurse is mentally checking out of reality on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But the immediate problem for him isn't even Annie's personality.
No.
It's the pain. And King spends so much time on the metaphysics of pain here. It's not just, ouch, my legs hurt. It's a whole world.
He does. And we have to talk about the pilings metaphor. It's probably one of the most effective descriptions of chronic pain I've ever read in modern literature. It really anchors you, the reader, in Paul's experience.
So break that down for us. This is the Revere Beach memory he keeps having.
Yes. Paul hallucinates, or maybe he just remembers being at Revere Beach as a child. He sees these old, rotten wood pilings sticking out of the water.
Okay.
They're the remains of an old pier, maybe, and they're covered in this green slime. They're broken, ugly, covered in barnacles. Just disgusting.
I can picture it.
When the tide comes in, the cool water covers them and they disappear. The surface looks smooth and calm. You wouldn't even know that all that rot is just underneath. But when the tide goes out...
The pilings are exposed again.
Exactly. They're revealed again in all their ugliness.
And in this metaphor, the pilings are his shattered legs.
The pilings are the reality of his injury. The pulverized bone, the torn flesh, the raw nerve endings. The tide is the drug she's giving him, Novril.
Okay, no.
It's a heavy, codeine-based painkiller. When she gives him the pills, the tide comes in. The agony is submerged. He can drift in the cool water of the high. But inevitably, the tide goes out, the drugs wear off, and the pilings, the painkiller, are revealed to be exactly where they always were.
They haven't healed at all.
Not at all. They've just been hidden.
And the terrifying part of that metaphor is that Annie controls the moon.
Exactly. That is the perfect way to put it. Annie creates the tides. She decides when the tide comes in, she decides when he gets relief and when he has to suffer.
And this creates a cycle of dependence that just... it must move terrifyingly fast.
It does. Paul realizes he isn't just injured anymore, he is becoming an addict. He is physically dependent on the codeine.
Which has to be so humiliating for him. I mean, he's this wealthy, successful man from New York, a guy who drinks Dom Perignon, and now he's begging a stranger for pills.
And completely dependent on her for a bedpan. The bedpan humiliation is a key part of her breaking his will. She makes him wait for it. She makes him thank her for it. But the drug dependence... that's the chain. Annie knows this. She uses the pills as a lever. If he is good, the tide comes in. If he is bad, he stays on the dry, rotting pilings, screaming.
Which brings us to the moment where being bad takes on a whole new meaning. This is the turning point. Annie has been reading Paul's latest published book, Misery's Child.
The one that came out right before his accident.
The book where Paul finally killed off Misery Chastain.
He killed her to free himself. That was the whole point. He wanted to write serious books like Fast Cars. He was just so tired of the romance, so tired of the expectations from his fans.
A box they'd put him in.
Exactly. So in Misery's Child, the character dies in childbirth. It's meant to be a tragic, beautiful, but definitive ending. For Paul, writing that death scene was a celebration. He said he was laughing when he wrote it. He felt light. He was finally done.
But Annie. Well, Annie doesn't see it as a literary choice. She doesn't see it as an author moving on to a new phase of his career.
No. When she reaches the end of that book, she returns to Paul's room in a state that Paul describes as a weather front.
A weather front. I like that.
It isn't just anger, it's elemental fury. It's like a thunderstorm rolling in. She throws a pitcher of ice water at him, which is shocking enough, but then she punches his pillow right next to his head.
So the physical threat is escalating.
But the delusion is what's really absolute. She doesn't say, I didn't like the ending. She screams, you murdered her.
She completely denies the boundary between fiction and reality. To her, Misery Chastain is a real person, and Paul is the caretaker who failed her. Or worse.
The caretaker who turned into a murderer. And because he has been bad, because he has committed this crime against Misery, she punishes him.
But not with violence, at least not at first.
No, she punishes him with abandonment. She locks him in the room and she leaves the house. She just says she needs to go away to think.
And she's gone for how long? It's like 2 days.
She's gone for over 50 hours.
50 hours. Let's really contextualize that for you.
Yeah.
A man with pulverized legs, addicted to high-strength narcotics, completely unable to move, locked in a room, no food, no water, and no pills.
It's a descent into absolute hell.
Yeah.
And King details the suffering minutely. First, there's what he calls junkie's revenge, the withdrawal. His body is just screaming for the codeine. He's cramping, sweating, shaking. His skin feels like it's crawling with insects. Then there's pretty thirsty. Dehydration sets in. His tongue swells up in his mouth. He starts to hallucinate.
And this leads to the moment that really, I think, strips away any remaining dignity he has. It's the moment where the reader realizes just how desperate his situation has become.
He has to drink his own urine.
Yeah.
He cups his hand and drinks it just to survive. It's repulsive, yes, but it serves a huge narrative purpose. It shows how quickly civilization just falls away when you are in that level of distress. It reduces Paul to a purely animal state.
He isn't a famous author anymore.
No, he is a creature trying to stay alive for one more hour.
And psychologically, he starts to spiral. He becomes convinced she's not coming back. He thinks she's killed herself.
He imagines her shooting herself in her car somewhere, maybe up in the hills. And if she's dead, well, that means he is going to die of thirst in that bed. He realizes he's a rat in a trap. If she doesn't come back, he dies a slow, lonely death.
So he actually starts praying for her return.
He does. He prays for his captor, his tormentor, to come back because the alternative is so much worse.
But she does come back. And when she returns, the dynamic shifts again. She's calm now, she's thought deeply, and she has a solution.
Yeah, she treats him like a sick child again, giving him water, wiping his face. But she has this new, terrifying clarity. She has gone through his things while he was passed out or maybe during the initial rescue, and she found the manuscript for Fast Cars.
The one he was driving to the coast to celebrate.
And she hates it.
She hates it.
She loathes it. She calls it a dirty book. She's offended by the profanity. There are F-bombs, there's grit, there's violence. She says it has no nobility.
So she sees him as a good man who's been corrupted.
Exactly. To Annie, Paul is a good man who has been led astray by the corrupt New York literary scene, and she wants to save him from his own talent.
So she brings a barbecue grill into the bedroom.
A charcoal grill. In his bedroom, can you just imagine the smell? The lighter fluid, the charcoal dust, all in a sick room. It's grotesque. She lights it, and she offers him a choice.
The choice.
She holds out his pain medication, the Novril he has been literally screaming for 2 days, and she says he can have the pills, but only if he burns Fast Cars.
Now, we have to remind everyone again, this is the late 80s. There is no cloud storage. There is no Google Drive. There is no email attachment he sent to his agent. This stack of paper. It is the only copy in existence.
Correct. Paul is superstitious. He never made a copy until the second draft. He even burned his notes. So this manuscript represents 2 years of his life. It represents his soul's bid for freedom from misery. It is his claim to being a serious artist.
It's proof that he's more than just the misery guy.
Yeah.
And Annie. Annie doesn't even conceive that there could be another copy.
Why not?
Her narcissism limits her worldview. She just assumes that if she destroys this one, it's gone forever. And in this case, she's right. She holds the power of history in her hands.
So Paul has to choose the pain, the withdrawal, the absolute agony, or his art.
And he chooses the relief. It's a devastating moment for him. He realizes that the lives in the book, the characters he spent 2 years building from nothing, they're just shadows compared to the crushing reality of his pain. The body wins over the mind.
And she makes him do it himself.
She puts the match in his hand. She forces him to light the fire. She won't do it herself. He has to be the one to destroy it. It has to be his act of penance.
It's a ritualistic uncreation.
It is. He burns it page by page at first.
Yeah.
He watches the scene where his main character, Tony Bonasaro, is introduced. Just curl up and turn to black ash. He watches 2 years of work turn into smoke that he describes as smelling like the devil's cloakroom. It's acrid. It chokes him.
And Annie's reaction to this is so disturbing. She just cleans up.
She washes the ashes away with a bucket of water like it's just some dirt on the floor. She scrubs the grill. Once nasty, never neat, she says.
It's total domination.
She has destroyed his identity as a modern writer and forced him back into the box she wants him in. She has literally burned away his attempt to escape her.
Which brings us to the, well, let's call it the heist segment. Because Paul doesn't just lie there and take it forever. Annie announces she's going to town to buy paper for him to write a new book, Misery's Return. And Paul realizes this is his chance.
He needs Annie insurance, that's what he calls it. He needs his own stash of pills. He knows that as long as she controls the supply, he is a complete slave. So he decides to leave the room while she is gone.
The physical struggle here, I mean, King's description of it is incredible. Just moving from the bed to the wheelchair is described like he's climbing Mount Everest.
It's not an action movie sequence where he just hops in. It's slow, agonizing torture.
Every single movement.
The pain is excruciating. He describes his legs as feeling like they are filled with festering shards of glass. Every movement sends these shockwaves through his nervous system. And he uses a coping mechanism here that I think is really telling. He creates a sportscaster in his head.
The Sheldon kid is showing incredible guts today.
Exactly. He narrates his own struggle like it's some big sporting event. He's at the 20, he's at the 10, touchdown. It's a way of dissociating.
Right, to put some distance between his mind and his body.
Yes. If he views his body as a separate entity, a player on a field, he can force it to move despite all the signals telling him to stop. It allows him to step outside the agony just enough to function, and he manages to drag himself into the wheelchair.
But the door is locked.
The door is locked.
Yeah.
But Paul is a writer who does his research. He once wrote a book about a car thief, so he knows the theory of lockpicking. And he spots a bobby pin Annie dropped on the rug.
And this scene is just, the tension is unbearable. He's trying to pick the lock, his hands are shaking, sweat is pouring down his face, he's listening for the little clips of the tumblers, and then snap.
The bobby pin breaks inside the lock.
Which is the nightmare scenario. If he leaves evidence that he's been out of the room, she will kill him. Or worse.
But luck is on his side. He managed to trip the tumbler just before it broke. The door opens, he gets into the hallway.
And he makes it to the bathroom, and in the linen closet, he finds the mother lode.
The stash. Cartons and cartons of drugs. Upjohn, Lilly, Cam Pharmaceuticals. This is a massive revelation for him.
What does it tell him?
It implies that during her time as a nurse, Annie was stealing medication on an industrial scale. She didn't just take a few pills here and there. She emptied the pharmacy. She's been stockpiling for years.
And he finds the Novril.
He finds sample boxes of Novril, and he steals them. He hides them in his underwear. It's a small victory, but it's a huge shift in the balance of power. He has a secret stash. He isn't entirely dependent on her whim for relief anymore. He has a buffer.
But then he gets greedy. Or maybe just hopeful. He sees the telephone in the parlor.
The lifeline. He thinks, I can end this right now. I can call the cops. I can call for help. He rolls over. He picks up the receiver, and there is no dial tone.
It's a prop.
It's a prop phone. Annie has removed the jack and filled the hole in the wall with glue. She keeps the phone there solely to keep up appearances.
Oh, that's chilling.
It tells Paul everything he needs to know about her paranoia. She is terrified of the neighbors, the Roydmans, finding out about her. She maintains this careful facade of normalcy to hide the absolute rot inside.
A freshly painted house.
Yeah.
A phone on the table.
It's all just a set design for a play called I'm a Normal Person.
And speaking of keeping up appearances, he barely makes it back to the room before she returns.
This sequence is so cinematic, you can just see it. He hears her car rumble into the driveway. He has to navigate the wheelchair back through that narrow door frame. He gets stuck. He bangs the door. He's terrified. He's chipped the paint, which he knows would be a dead giveaway. Annie notices everything.
And the lock. The broken bobby pin is still inside the mechanism.
Right, the tongue of the lock won't retract because the broken piece of metal is jamming the mechanism. He's frantically jiggling it while he hears her key in the front door. He hears her footsteps coming down the hall.
It's a race against time.
And he manages to force the door shut and get himself into the chair by the window. Seconds, literally seconds before she walks in. He is just drenched in sweat, looking like he's about to have a heart attack.
And he plays it off. He tells her he's sweating from the pain, and she buys it.
Yep.
But he has the pills. He's safe, for now.
Safe is very relative, because now the real work begins. Annie has bought him a typewriter.
The Royal.
An old, heavy, black Royal typewriter. Paul describes it as grinning at him. And it's missing the N key.
The N key is missing.
The N is gone, so he'll have to write it in by hand on every page. And she has bought him paper. She wants him to write Misery's Return. She wants him to bring Misery Chastain back from the dead.
So this brings us to the segment we're calling Scheherazade and the Fair Story. Because this is, quite literally, writing for your life.
He is Scheherazade from 1001 Nights. He realizes this immediately. As long as he keeps the Sultan, or in this case, the nurse, entertained, he lives. If the story stops, he dies. If the story is boring, he dies.
And Annie is a very tough critic. She isn't just a passive reader who will accept anything.
No. Paul tries to just magic Misery back to life. He writes a scene where it turns out a doctor saved her at the last minute, a detail that was never in the previous book. He thinks, I'll just hack this out. She won't know the difference.
And she knows immediately.
She rejects it instantly. She calls it a cheat. And this leads to this fascinating little discussion on narrative logic and literary theory right there in the farmhouse. Annie tells him about the Rocket Man serials she watched as a kid.
Oh, I loved this part. This anecdote is so funny, but so revealing about her psychology.
It is. She talks about how at the end of the episode, Rocket Man would be trapped in a car going over a cliff. It goes over the edge. Boom. Huge explosion. Fire.
To be continued.
Right. But the next week, they'd show the same scene, but this time, Rocket Man would jump out of the car before it went over the cliff.
And little Annie Wilkes stood up in the movie theater and screamed.
She screamed at the screen. She felt betrayed. She yelled, "That isn't what happened." To her, the story has to follow its own internal laws. It doesn't have to be realistic. She has no problem accepting that Rocket Man can fly, but it must be fair.
It must be fair. That is her golden rule of storytelling.
It is. You can't change the rules just because you wrote yourself into a corner. She forces Paul to realize that he can't just say, oh, that part didn't happen. He has to use the existing text and find a genuine loophole. He has to play fair with his reader.
So Paul has a challenge, and he hates her, he wants to kill her, but as a writer, you get the sense he's kind of intrigued by the puzzle.
That's the seduction of the creative spark, isn't it? Paul recalls a childhood camp game they played called Can You, where kids challenged each other to write their way out of a corner. The hero is in a pit of snakes with no ladder. Can you get him out?
And he realizes Annie is playing Can You with him.
But with the highest stakes imaginable, and his writer's brain, it can't help but engage. He starts to see the problem of reviving Misery not just as a chore to stay alive, but as a genuine narrative puzzle that needs solving.
And he finds a way, right? He uses a bee sting from the previous book.
It's a brilliant retcon, really. He remembers a detail about Misery being buried with a bee sting, and he uses it to create a state of catalepsy that would have mimicked death. He was buried alive.
And Annie loves it.
She adores it because it's fair. It uses the established lore to change the outcome. And this segment really highlights the strange, twisted symbiosis between them. Annie creates a cripple study for him. She sets up a board over his lap, the typewriter. She is his warden, but she is also his muse.
A terrifying, violent muse.
But a muse nonetheless. You could argue she pushes him to write better, more cleverly than he would have on his own.
But while he's writing, while part of his brain is solving this puzzle, his mind is working on other things. He's profiling her. He's trying to figure out who this woman really is.
Yes. Segment 7, the deductions. Paul starts using his observational skills, his writer's skills, to piece together her history. He looks at the massive stash of drugs. He looks at her flashes of rage and her catatonic states. And he remembers a line she dropped during one of her rants.
The Denver line.
They don't take you all the way to Denver if you're innocent.
That line just chills me to the bone. They don't take you all the way to Denver.
Paul deduces that she was on trial in Denver, likely for crimes she committed as a nurse. And given the drugs and her personality, he suspects she was a serial killer of patients, an angel of death, or a dragon lady who played God with people's lives.
And the fact that she's out here, alone, with apparently no one checking on her.
It suggests she got away with it. Or at least she was acquitted due to lack of evidence or some technicality. But the silence is the loudest clue. No one has come looking for Paul. His car hasn't been found.
So that implies she's covered her tracks.
It implies Annie has hidden the evidence. She isn't just a fan who stumbled upon him. She is a predator who has claimed him. She has likely hidden the car, buried it under the snow, and wiped away any tracks.
And Paul has this memory, this image that comes to him. A bird he saw at the zoo once. A bird from Africa.
Yes, he recalls seeing this bird, colorful, exotic, beautiful, trapped in a small cage in a cold climate it wasn't meant for, and it looks sad and doomed.
And he realizes
he is that bird. To Annie, he is an exotic pet. He is colorful, he is fascinating, but he is trapped in her cage, far from his natural habitat.
And pets don't live forever, especially not when the owner is as unstable as Annie.
That's the realization that hits him like a ton of bricks. He calls it the spring melt theory. Right now, in the dead of winter, he is relatively safe because the snow hides his wrecked car. And he's useful because he's writing the book she wants. But what happens when the snow melts?
His car will be revealed. The world will start to encroach on her little kingdom.
And she'll have to get rid of him.
She will.
Annie even warns him at one point, "I have such a temper." Paul realizes that once he stops being entertaining, or once the external world threatens to reveal her secrets, she will kill him. She won't let him go. She can't. He knows way too much.
So the book, Misery's Return. It's not just a story he's writing. It's an hourglass.
That's a great way to put it. Every page he types is a grain of sand falling. When the last page is typed, his time is up. Unless he can find a way to change the ending of his own story, he has to outright his own death sentence.
So, stepping back from the narrative for a second, What is the core takeaway here? We have a writer held hostage by a fan who forces him to write the same old stuff he hates. It feels like a pretty heavy metaphor for something.
Oh, it is explicitly a metaphor for the writer's relationship with their audience. King is absolutely exploring the tyranny of expectation.
The tyranny of expectation.
Fans say, "We love you, we love your work," but what they often mean is, "We love this one specific thing you did, and we demand you do it again and again and again."
And if you try to grow, like Paul writing Fast Cars, they get angry. They feel betrayed.
They might not chop your foot off, which, spoiler, happens later in the book, though not in the section we covered today, but they will metaphorically burn your manuscript. They will reject your attempt to grow. Annie Wilkes is the ultimate toxic fan.
Though she loves him.
She loves Paul, but she loves him only as a generator of the content she desires. She doesn't see him as a human being with his own artistic needs. She sees him as a misery machine.
And the really scary part is, the machine actually works better under pressure. Paul starts writing some really good stuff because he has to play fair, he has to be clever just to survive.
That's the dark irony King leaves us with. Suffering can fuel art. The restriction, that can you game, it forces a certain kind of creativity. Paul's writing for an audience of one, but that audience is terrifyingly attentive and demanding.
So it raises the question, is the artist ever truly free? Or are they always, in some way, captive to the ones who consume their work?
That is a terrifying thought to leave on, isn't it? You create something, you put it out into the world, and suddenly it's not really yours anymore. It belongs to the Annie Wilkeses of the world. And they might just lock you in a room until you give them exactly what they want.
And they will claim they're doing it all out of love.
They will look you in the eye and say, with total sincerity, "I'm your #1 fan."
Chilling. Absolutely chilling. This has been a deep dive into the abyss of misery. It's a story about survival, addiction, and the terrifying power that a good story can have over people.
And a pretty strong reminder to always, always back up your files.
Yes, always back up your files. And maybe check the weather report before you drive through the Rockies. Thank you for listening. Keep the lights on.
Goodbye.